Well, good afternoon, everybody out there in Facebook land. I'm Mary Helen Dellinger, the curator of the Manassas Museum, and thank you for joining us today for our Spotlight on History Talk. I'm talking to you from the museum's main gallery today. Now, normally this program is held at noon. We have been doing this at 2 o'clock for the last few weeks. This is the last Wednesday. We're going to be at 2 p.m. Next week, we switch back to our noon time slot. So if you can't make the 2 o'clock time, if that's tough, back to 12 o'clock next Wednesday. And as always, these videos are available on our Facebook page afterwards. So if you miss this live, don't worry. You can go back and look at it in its entirety later. So hopefully everybody knows that this Sunday is Mother's Day for all of you out there. It's Mother's Day this weekend. And in honor of that date, I thought I would share with you today some letters in our collection that were written by Civil War soldiers to their mothers and also from mothers to sons. So I've pulled 3 from our collection, and I'm going to read one in full and snippets from the others because we don't want to take up too much time. Now, when read in full, these letters have all the typical things that you expect to see when soldiers write home. They're filled with descriptions of camp life, requests for care packages from home. Please send me, new socks, paper to write on. Questions about what's happening with family members is a big thing. The weather, and of course, very vivid accounts of battles. So to mothers waiting at home, it must have been comforting to hear from their sons, knowing that they were in harm's way, but to also hear that they were alive and well. And these letters may have been the only way of knowing whether or not their child was alive and where they were. The same goes for letters sent to soldiers that were away from home. These were filled with news of family, how work was going on the farm, what was happening in their hometown, and often with pleas for a safe return. So for homesick soldiers, hearing from their mother was probably the highlight of their day, just like for soldiers today. It's always great to hear from your mother. So the first letter I share with you today is from Henry S. Figures. This is Henry. We've got this picture offline. There he is, looking kind of menacing, holding his Bowie knife, his little hat. So Henry was a member of the Longstreet's Division of the 4th Alabama in Law's Brigade. He was up here in this region in the early parts of the war, and on September 21st, 1861, he wrote to his mother from Camp Hill, Virginia. Now today that's in West Virginia, over near Harper's Ferry. His letter is very brief. I'm going to show it to you here. This is the whole letter that we had. Hold it up like that so we can see, written very quick note dashed off to his mother. We have this in Mylar, which is why you don't see me wearing the white curator gloves. It's okay to hold this like this. And in the letter, Henry wrote to his mother, "I only have time to tell you that we have made a march of 22 miles toward the Potomac. I am very well and did not stiffen from the march. Will write tomorrow. I am on guard duty today." So as you saw, that was a very short letter, and often soldiers only had time to dash off a few lines. Camp life was a lot of hurry up and wait, and a lot of times they were very busy. Paper was extremely hard to come by, especially for soldiers that were in the field. You had to carry everything you needed with you, so you didn't really carry around a lot of paper. And mail did not really run regularly like what we're used to today. So while brief, this letter from a Confederate soldier let his mother know that he was alive and well, and also where he was, which was a big thing since they couldn't call home like we can. So I'm sure that she cherished having that knowledge. Henry did not survive the war and was killed in action at the Battle of the Wilderness on May 6, 1864 at the age of 20. So that's not a happy ending to the story of Henry Figures. An interesting footnote to this letter was that after the war, Camp Hill became home to Storer College, which was a school used to train African Americans to become public school teachers. So that was kind of an interesting little side note that we found out about it. So the second letter, this one is actually from a mother to a son. This one is written, it's a little bit longer. If we were to take it out of the Mylar and open it up, this is a 3-page letter. And this one was written to James R. Davis of the 49th Virginia on March 1st, 1863. And while it's a brief letter, it's filled with heart-wrenching news that was delivered to Sergeant Davis. So I am going to read you this one in full. So Mrs. Davis writes, "Dear son, I take my pen in hand to write you a few lines to let you know that I have not forgot you yet, and hope these few lines may find you well and in good spirits, hoping this cruel war won't last long, and you will come home to your mother that loves you so well. I am not in good health and never expect to be again. The family are all well at present and send their love to you, particular George. All your friends send their love to you. My son, I'm sorry to tell you that your sister are gone to a world unseen. I hope better than this one. She was unwilling to die to the last. She said she was so young to die. I'd done all I could to save her, but God knowed best. He took her from me. Your father and all the family taken on awful. They had to take him from over her at the grave. He took on so about her. She died December 26th. My dear son, you are my last thought at night and the first in the morning. My troubles are great for you. The day your sister died was trouble to us all. I know where she was laid, but I know not where you will be at this time. But I hope you will come home safe to your mother that loves you so dear. My eyes are watered with tears while I write these few lines to you. My son, write to me every chance you get. I want to hear from you and see you too. You must excuse my writing. My hand trembles and my heart aches for you. God bless you, my son. I must bring my letter to a close by bidding you farewell till we do meet again, your affectionate mother till death. So that's a kind of a heart-wrenching letter, but it's very poignant, and it kind of talks about what this one mother was going through. She's lost a daughter, and her one son is away and in harm's way. Now, James Davis served again with the local unit, the 49th. He survived the entire length of the war, although he was wounded in Spotsylvania at the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. He spent the last months of the war as a POW before being released on June 15, 1865. It is unknown if his mother lived to see him come home, so we weren't able to determine that. More research needed. So our third and final letter today was written by George Cog Round, one of the more locally famous figures during the Civil War. People may recognize this image. We have an elementary school named after him here. He was writing to his mother while stationed at Fort Richardson in Alexandria, Virginia. So here's George in his uniform. It's a copy of a picture. In his letter, George spends a great deal of time discussing the weather and then turns his attention to military matters. And here's what the letter looks like, if anybody wants to take a look at that. So again, this is a very long letter. George writes in a very small hand. It's difficult to decipher. And we have quite a bit of his papers. And this is just one of his letters. So in his letter home to his mother, he says, we have been placed lately in General Franklin's division. It is the same division that the 27th New Jersey is in. Secretary Stanton didn't like the idea of independent regiments. He is said to have said that he would have no kid-glove regiments in the field. I think there is more prospect of seeing an engagement than ever before since we have been here. The 14th Massachusetts, close by here, is on a similar footing with us, being a heavy artillery regiment, and today they had orders to be ready to march at 1 hour's notice. A messenger come tonight, and it is possible we may have similar orders. I will duly notify the folks if such a thing happens. I presume the idea is to make some reconnaissance in force as to hold the mass of the rebel army at Manassas for the accommodation of Burnside, Sherman, and Halleck. And when the proper time comes, when they are so hemmed in as to wish to strike further south, I presume there will be a general movement in all directions towards the Gap. And by that, he's probably referring to the Manassas Gap. So I found this letter very interesting from son to mother, because unlike many conflicts today, soldiers at that time wrote home freely of what was going on, unit dispositions, where they were, what the plans were, and other matters that would be of great help to the enemy should their letter fall into enemy hands. So that in itself is kind of an interesting, different way of doing things. So I'm sure that this letter from George to his mother probably caused her some anxiety to hear that he was probably in a battle by this point, but also she was probably very happy to know where he was. So those are our 3 Civil War letters, and I know I said at the beginning that we were only going to look at Civil War letters, but this morning when I was going through some other documents, I came across a copy of a diary written by Nanny Lewis Wheeler Lake. The Lakes were residents of Prince William County when World War I broke out, so this is a little bit later, obviously, than the Civil War. Their son, Private First Class Maury M. Lake, here's his picture, was sent overseas as part of the American forces that were fighting in France. And Maury was killed in action at the Battle of the Meuse-Argonne on October 4th, 1918. So that was right towards the end of the war. So this is him in his uniform. We don't know where this was taken. Now, Mrs. Lake had the opportunity to go to France in 1930, 12 years after her son's death, to visit the cemetery where he was buried. And she kept an account of this visit in her diary, and we have a copy of that. Now, the original's in a private collection, so I don't have that to show you. But I did pull out a very small, brief bit from that because I thought this was interesting, even though it's not a letter. This is a mother writing about her son. Wednesday, August 13th at Verdun. We were to have gone to the cemetery this morning, but just as we're all settled in the buses, the manager of the cemetery, which is 20 miles from Verdun, called on the phone and said that there was quite a storm raging there and the grass would be too wet for us to walk around. So we went back and soon it cleared and the sun came out. The lady who keeps the hotel had packed lunch for us, made hot tea and coffee, and with the addition of those hot drinks, we ate our lunch there and then went to the cemetery. I did not realize how hard it would be to go to Mari's grave after all these years. It made me just sick. The government had provided flags to mark the graves so we could find them easily, and beautiful wreaths which you were given to put on the graves. I will take the flag home with me. So she goes on in her diary to describe other things about her visit, but that was her first kind of impression of visiting her son's grave that went away and she never got him back, and so she was able to go to see his burial spot in France. And here we did find a picture online of the temporary marker. It obviously doesn't look like this anymore, but that was the one that was put up. And probably what she saw. I'm not sure when they switched over to the different markers you would see today. But that's kind of another poignant mother and son letter. So that's all we have for today. Again, these spotlights on history are meant to be brief, quick looks at our collection. I hope you found these letters interesting, just like I did, and these are just a few of the many examples that we have in our collection, and I thought this was a great time to share these with everybody since Mother's Day is coming up this Sunday. So again, I'm Mary Helen Dellinger, and I invite you to join us next Wednesday, May 13th, when we return to our regular noon time slot for our next Spotlight on History. See you then.